Rev up your engines!
Well, hilariously enough, Fiat has now extended the shutdown of the production of the 500e, their little electric car, for another couple of months. Originally, they said, oh, we're shutting it down for a month. Well, now they say they're not even going to start up until November. We'll see what happens in November if they even start up again. As the consumers have said, there was never a demand for a Fiat 500 electric vehicle. Now, in Europe, people like the 500s, little bitty things. A lot of people had diesels. I know people that have diesel engines once. They liked them. Little car for putting around little towns and villages. Well, the electric one is a massive failure. Originally, they said they're going to shut it down for 1 month of production. Now it's going to be 3 months. Who knows? Maybe they'll shut them down entirely and realize that, yes, people don't want some crappy little electric car that isn't cheap. It's still relatively expensive. Yet another Fiat failure. It was just a stupid idea to begin with. Fiat's a company that, if you know anything about, they have nothing but a history of electrical problems with their regular cars. Then all of a sudden, oh, gee, we're going to make it all electric car. Maybe it'll be full of all problems. People that bought the 500s in the United States, the non-electric versions, I've seen engines blow up at 20,000 miles, transmissions blow up at 15,000 miles. They were rolling piles of junk because in the United States, of course, 96% of the people drive automatic transmission cars, and the Fiat automatics were rolling piles of crap, where in Europe, most people are driving the manual trannies, and that gets rid of a lot of the problems the cars have. Maybe they'll wise up and not build them at all. We can only hope. Now, here's a hilarious fact. Hyundai Tucson, one model, outsold Dodge, Chrysler, Fiat, and Alfa Romeo brands combined here in the United States. You know, people don't want that Stellantis crap. Now, hilariously enough, the Hyundai Tucson had a 7% drop in sales. Well, even with that drop, they still outsell all those models that Stellantis sells in the United States. Now, I laughed my butt off, especially with the Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo has been a company that's been in problems forever. They make sports cars that basically, they're fun to drive, but then they fall apart as soon as you look at them. And then they thought, oh, let's bring them back into the United States. What a mistake, you know. And then they try to rebrand one of the Alphas, the Dodge Hornet, right? It's just a rebadged Alfa Romeo. It's not the Dodge Hornet American car that people would turn into muscle cars and stuff. No, just like the Dodge Dart. It wasn't the Dodge Dart from the 70s. It was just an Italian piece of junk that they don't sell anymore. I think they stopped selling them in 2016 or something. Maybe they should just give up and stop trying to sell that crap to Americans. It's just ridiculous. They're hardly selling any of them, but of course, they're European. It's a French-Italian company mainly, and they're trying to push their junk on us. So there's one way to get even, which, like I always say, just don't buy the stuff. Eventually, they'll go away. If nobody buys their stuff, eventually they'll be forced to leave, and their vehicles will only be seen in museums. Now, here's a hilarious story. A dealer somehow managed to sell a brand new Dodge Dart last month. And you might think, so what's the big deal about that? Well, the last year the Dodge Darts were made was 2016, right? So that was 8 years ago. So this thing's been sitting for 8 years, right? Now, what a lot of people don't understand is the dealerships generally don't own the cars. They borrow money from the bank, and then they pay every month. So that means for 8 years, some dealership was paying on this stupid car. Maybe they paid it off, right? And then they managed to finally sell this thing. It was a brand new car, right? Not a used car, it was a brand new car, just sitting there. Now, do you want to buy an 8-year-old brand new car? Not really. The tires will be dry rotted, the rubber will be rotted. It's been sitting there for 8 years. Plus, if you know anything about Dodge Darts, those are just pretty much rebranded Fiat pieces of crap. So would you want to buy a Fiat that's been sitting for 8 years, not being driven? Not really. Now, there was no mention on the price that the guy paid for the thing. Somehow, somewhere, a Dodge Dart was sitting for 8 years, and somebody decided, hey, gee, I want to buy that. I guess they didn't watch any of my videos, right? There's no accounting for taste. They weren't very good-looking cars anyway. I mean, look at these Dodge Darts. The 2016 Dodge Dart. Not the greatest-looking car. But, like I say, it's pretty much a rebadged Fiat, so they were rolling piles of junk. They only sold them for a few years, then they had to pull out of the market because people weren't buying them, and they had so much problems with recalls on them. Some poor fool went out and bought a brand new one that was 8 years old at a dealership. Well, here's something you might not realize is going on, but it's going on. Uber and Lyft drivers are using Teslas as makeshift robo-taxis, right? They're putting on that, in quote, full self-driving mode, driving people around. Now, there's still a driver there, because they gotta tell it what to do, right? There's still a driver there. A lot of people don't know that things like Waymo and stuff are totally regulated by the government, but these aren't because they're privately owned Teslas. They're in the gray area, right? So some people are using the self-driving as Ubers and Lyfts, and what happened that is kind of putting it to the forefront is that a Tesla rammed into an SUV in an intersection in suburban Las Vegas. So there was an accident. Now, they gave the ticket to the owner who was behind the wheel, even though it was driving itself. You remember old Elon, long time ago, said, you're going to make money with your Tesla. You can just, it'll be a self-driving taxi. It'll make you money while you're sleeping. Well, not really. As usual, most of his promises are just dreams that somehow have turned into nightmares in the real world. And while Waymo and Cruise are heavily regulated by the government, Teslas aren't. They're privately owned vehicles, so people turn it on and they're driving it around. Now, in the case of this guy, he got a ticket because he's the one behind the wheel and it's his car. But still, they should make some law about it, saying, no, you can't. You're not regulated. You can't do that, right? Wait till they kill somebody. Then there'll really be a stink about it. And the one that did have an accident, well, the driver of the Las Vegas Tesla said, the software has failed to slow down my vehicle, even after the SUV emerged from a blind spot created by another vehicle and hit it. So much for his full self-driving. And then, as you saw, he got sued in court by investors who lost money in Tesla, saying that he promised the stuff that never came. But the court said, no, you can't do that. You can't sue him because, oh, that was just something he said. He didn't really mean it, you know? If you remember the story I talked about a few days ago, he won because it's puffery, mere puffery. He was just exaggerating things. It's puffery. Even though he calls it full self-driving, right? Oh, that's just puffery. It's puff. I think we're living in Dickinson, England or something. Oh, it's just puffery. He didn't mean it. So it isn't full self-driving. People are using it as it's full self-driving and running into things. And you might be riding in their car. What if you get damaged? Who are you going to sue? Well, Hyundai's got a big gamble going, probably at the wrong time. They just opened up their $7.6 billion EV plant in Georgia. At least they claim that's what they're spending, probably for tax write-off, right? And the first Ioniq 5 is rolling out their bigger electric car. Now, what a time to bring it out when nobody's buying electric cars, right? Is he trying to sell ice to the Eskimos here? Now, Hyundai claims they put $7.6 billion into this factory. I think they're inflating the money myself, but what can you do? But they have another $5 billion EV battery plant that's under construction. 2 in the United States. The top end Ioniq 5 starts at $67,475. Expensive, right? And the cheapest one I found was $44,000. They're not cheap cars. They're fully electric battery cars. The things that people don't seem to be that interested in buying. So they threw billions down in there. I wouldn't be surprised they lose a fortune on that one. Hyundai's have a really well-deserved reputation for making poor cars. 1, they're going to have to convince people to buy them, which is going to be a hard selling. 2, they're going to have to be pretty foolproof, which none of the Hyundais have been so far, so I can't see all of a sudden the company does a 180 and goes in the opposite direction and making great cars instead of making ones that fall apart all the time. But that's a lot of money to roll the dice on. Let's see what happens in the next few years. They just opened it up. The cars aren't for sale yet. They will be in a few months, they said. Let's see what happens. Boy, we sure are in a lawyer-engaged society. Stellantis is now suing the UAW in U.S. federal court over strike threats. Stellantis is saying they broke the agreement by threatening to strike after they signed the agreement. The union is planning on suing Chrysler, or Stellantis, whoever you want to call them, saying that, well, they're not abiding by the agreements that were set forth in our agreement. Saying, hey, you're shutting factories down, you're laying people off. They're arguing, while the ship is sinking. Stellantis sales in the United States are going, but the people who make them and the people who own the company are fighting each other in court while the company sinks. If it was modern day and the Titanic was sinking, I suppose they'd get involved. They'd start suing people. Maybe there'd be a couple of lawyers on the top of the deck arguing while it's going down. It's unbelievable what's going on in this country. Well, like I say, they can sue each other till cows come home. Hey, if nobody buys their cars, it's going to be meaningless. because the workers won't have any jobs because nobody's buying the cars and the company will go out of business. Well, hardy har har on the hypocrites of the world. The striking port union boss, he's furious that his luxury New Jersey estate was exposed in the media. Oh, he doesn't like it. Oh, he's getting death threats. Well, I wouldn't imagine people are going to start threatening the guys like you're representing these dock workers. You got this mansion on the ocean. You're driving a Bentley convertible, right? Oh, he said he doesn't care if it destroys the U.S. economy with his guys going on strike. That's okay, but oh, no, you can't possibly take pictures of his house to show how rich the guy is when he's trying to act like he cares about the workers. I mean, talk about blatant hypocrisy. So, what do they say? People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Oh, this guy's throwing stones and he's in a glass house, all right. Such hypocrites. They don't want the world to see what's actually out there, right? Yeah. This guy is all for the workers and everything as long as he can have his Bentley and his swimming pool and his mansion on the ocean. Yeah, he's a regular working class guy, right? Come on now, what a load of hypocrisy come out of these people. They want to pretend they're one thing, then you find out what a lie. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.